Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us as the Ageless Living Collaborative brings you yet another scintillating session, this one on supply chain management, which is probably the most popular topic right now with designers, vendors, and customers. Today, we have assembled an amazing group of experts that can give you various viewpoints on this challenging issue. I'd like to introduce the panel now. We have Faith Marabella from WDC Interiors. Carl Long is joining us from PMI. Jonas Spaeth is coming to us from Brookdale Senior Living. We have Shannon Romali from Meyer Design, and a returning guest and friend of ours, Dee Duncan from KB Contract. And because we often work from home, we have a dog barking. So welcome, everyone. I would like to request that all of our attendees today bring your questions. We're here to answer the questions. We know you have a lot of them, so please do write in. We know you're wondering, where's your stuff? And we know you have a lot of questions for our panelists. So please do use the chat and bring us your questions. And we're going to go ahead and start the session now. We're going to start with Carl Long, and we're going to really jump right into it. Carl, tell me, how did this past year change the supply chain?
Well, thanks, Stevie. So one, thanks for letting me be on this panel. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about this. It is actually one of the more difficult things related to project purchasing right now, because the last year has actually made the supply chain less predictable, more costly, and that directly impacts project delivery, that directly impacts operations, that directly impacts manufacturing, where if you can't know when something will deliver, you can't use it to make something else. And if you don't know how much something costs, how do you plan a budget? So over this last year, we've seen component parts go short because they can't get them delivered. We've seen shipping be completely imbalanced, where you have massive demand in some areas and lower demand in others. And what that ultimately does, it clogs up the Suez Canal. Not with that ship, but just with freight going the wrong direction. And that really makes it difficult for operators, for construction, for manufacturers to meet delivery deadlines, to meet design intent, because you can't get product that's ultimately needed and specified. So hopefully what we're going to be able to provide through this discussion will be some more insight into that, about ways to deal with that lack of predictability and increased costs.
I think those are all questions that everybody has, and we'll jump into some of that. Shannon, there's a lot of discussion on the delay of construction materials in the industry. What else are you seeing as major factors that can delay a project?
Yeah, thanks, Phoebe. And same, happy to be here with everybody this afternoon to talk about this. But as you mentioned, there's so much conversation in the industry right now regarding construction materials delays and how we're making adjustments to the process to account for some of that the best we can. To Carl's point, a lot of unpredictability surrounding it. But another area that we're really seeing causing or has the potential to cause delays projects is really the FF&E phase of things, where we used to see lead times of 6 to 8 weeks for FF&E. We're really looking at more like 14 to 18 now, and again, unreliable and inconsistent that is. So where we used to look at say a new construction project with a year to year and a half construction, starting FF&E phase with our clients 4 to 6 months prior to a project being complete. We're really now looking at those conversations more like 7 to 9 months ahead of time.
Wow.
So really accounting for those schedules, but also inconsistency in costs and budgeting, again, back to Carl's point. So you have those beginning phases of a project throughout, the duration of it, but really some of those phases at the latter end of a project continue to really have the ability to affect it.
And you're seeing costs. The costs are going crazy these days. And some of it could be from the demand. And I think you're seeing, just like you did with wood, you're seeing demand for resins, demand for different chemicals. And some of these chemical companies are seeing that and are raising prices. If some of it had to do with some weather issues a while back, but they've been known to even actually cut some of their demand, even their production, even though demand is increasing, just to get prices up. And I've never seen prices change this much, this fast, and to be this volatile in forever.
Yeah.
And no one will commit to the prices. I mean, we've got prices that are good for maybe 30 days. Because they the people who are the subs getting getting the materials don't know what they're going to pay for it next week. So we can't get the guarantees on that either. But it's funny, we're talking about cost increases, but also I would say almost just giant fluctuations. Lumber went up crazy, but it's coming back down again. So we all shifted and we danced and we said, "Ooh, change your structure from wood to steel or wood from something else," and then the cost comes back down and you're hot footing it back over to to wood again. It's staying current with all of this is just a mind bend. That's so on the construction side as well as the FF&E side. So it's a nutty game right now.
So how are you helping your clients with, these changes? And, you guys see it before they hear about it. So how do you manage that?
I mean,
Want to share their wisdom?
yeah, I'll jump in here. I think it's so simple yet complex, right? So it's with anything. I think communication is just a must. Obviously within the project team, the architect, designer, contractor, client. But just within our own industry and within, with each other, we're always leveraging our relationships with our reps and manufacturers and really doing our research constantly, really where they're at as a business, what challenges they're facing and how that could affect, our projects, our clients and our specifications. So we're really trying to take the lead on that communication and those connections, not relying on other parties, but really being an active participant in that.
That makes great sense, for sure.
And where we're talking sometimes, in response to the things that are happening and kind of happening with that communication and staying plugged in with everybody, also setting expectations from the beginning too. We were talking about, we design and we say, this is the design intent. This is the overall what we want to show you, so that when we are substituting little things out here or there, if we were trying to keep everybody, down to the, up to date on the gnat's ass, it would be impossible. They'd get tired of us. This is our job to do in the background, so we make it look easy, right? So so those are the things that and just keep your eye on the really big things that the client cares about, that you want to bring those things to their attention. So
one of the things we've had to do has been actually dig into our supplier supply chain and really look at where vendors are sourcing their product. Because as you get a custom design, and so PMI, we have different verticals. We do a lot of casino work, we do hospitality, we work in senior living, we work in multifamily. And so through all of those, you have different ways of kind of accessing information in the supply chain and accessing where manufacturing is being done, who's buying component parts from where, what their bottlenecks are, and then working with the interior design team to say, hey, this product is difficult right now. And Faith, your point about just staying up on it, this is a challenge for the next 3 months. This is something that we've seen an entire industry shift in talking about metal finishes, plating, and the different types of finishes that are needed there, where you used to be able to get those 10 years ago in the US. Now certain finishes you can't physically get them here. And so if you don't know where your vendors are buying product and what goes into making it, And then if you're not out ahead of it with the client, with the designer, with the vendor, and kind of working as a team, you get stuck. And then all of a sudden, to Shannon's point, 6 months out before, oh, we got to start installing. Oh crap, we don't have something, because you weren't planning ahead. You weren't into asking those types of questions to make informed decisions as you need to make changes.
Right.
Yeah, Carl, I couldn't agree with you more. Leveraging those strategic partnerships you already have in place to have that robust transparency into the supply chain and be able to understand lead time issues and concerns and kind of work together in tandem to reach your goals. That's what's really working, benefiting us all as we work through the current processes and that are in front of us on a weekly basis.
I'm going to take questions as we get them. And so we have a question, and I'd like for you all to weigh in on this. Can you think of an example when a vendor has handled a major shipping delay well for you? What's the best case scenario in a terrible scenario? Anyone want to take that one on?
Best case is knowing it well in advance. We have manufacturing that there's a manufacturer that actually is trying to ship product from Vietnam, and they're telling us there's going to be a shipping delay. They warned us ahead of time, and so what that does, that lets us plan, as opposed to the opposite. So a terrible example is different project, but a vendor getting ready to ship and then not giving us the insight into how they're routing that shipment. So as shipments are moving around, you can't get ahead of it. So planning and information early on lets us react to it. So good question. But again, it goes back to the communication and getting out ahead of it and partnering with those suppliers. Where's your bottleneck? What do we know? How to get ahead of it?
Anyone
I think
else?
I think you're absolutely right. It is the communication. I'll give you a bad, and I won't name who it is, but we have a major vendor in the industry who their demand has so outstripped their production. And then they've gotten into all the other delays that go along with some stuff. And it's actually made in the US, but they continue to have, because of productivity, because of people, because of all the other stuff. It's amazing the dates that keep changing. And as we do, the whole thing is it could even be fiber. Fiber is just not there, or the communication back between them and their vendors. It can be awful, and it can be more than extremely disruptive.
I think I saw somebody put in honesty, and I think that's a communication. That is a great thing, because the sooner that like you said, the worst thing is to absolutely put it off. Like, I get a shipping date and I'm like, okay, and I get the shipping date, and that's maybe in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, and now I get a new shipping date that's another whole month, but I don't even learn about that shipping date until 2 days before it was supposed to ship. So now it's that there's a break in trust in that relationship in business, because you want to be able to, like Carl's saying, the sooner you know about it, the better you can do something about it, prepare people, and know, and be able to manage it. Yeah, it's I can't tell you, I keep hearing horror stories about, you get a shipping and they say, oh, it was, was shipped, but oh, it was loaded on the truck, but the truck sat there for 2 or 3 days, and it's like, then it hasn't shipped. That's the honesty part that needs to, make sure that we just get that updated. Yeah.
Right. Jonah, what products have had their lead times extended due to these raw material shortages?
Yeah, so with the raw material shortage that we see from a lot of manufacturing companies in the South, primarily from that Texas winter freeze, or the winter freeze that went through the South that delayed production, a lot of the urethane products, elastomers, the foams, which create insulation, not just building insulation, but also like appliance insulation for refrigerators and freezers. Polyiso foam board, which is used for construction for roofs or the exterior of the building. Furniture foam and cushions, a lot of coatings, adhesives, sealants, paints, glues, and even wood binders really affected by this.
Wow. Well, that leads into a question we just received from one of our audience. Considering all product segments and finishes, is there one in particular that seems to be affected the most by the issues that we're discussing? Thoughts in general?
Foam, everything. Everybody's screaming about foam. You can't get foam. So that's what I hear everybody saying. It's a whole choir of choruses, but I also learned about with the shortages that Jonas is saying, you know, the finished liquid paint. It depends on what luster of paint you're even choosing where those shortages are, which I thought was very interesting. And that had to do with the freeze in Texas, actually. So not all of it's COVID, some of it's Texas, some of it's cyber attacks, some of it. So we've got a lot this year. It was quite packed with some great challenges to overcome. But yeah,
that doesn't even touch the labor issues, right?
Right.
And speak up on foam. It's the same kind of thing. There are other and different types of foam that are out there that could be substituted.
And that,
Which we found. We've moved from here to there and have had some successes. So
yeah. See, to that point now, we're asking our manufacturers, where do you get your foam, right? When did you used to ask these questions? But it's where do you get your foam? And then that helps determine what we're going to specify or not. So
And a lot of these shortages we're
We've
seeing
had-
right now are regionalized. They're not everywhere throughout the country for these different products, like paint, for example. You might have a market where you walk into a Home Depot and you can't find a single can of paint. That's just shocking. But at least right now, it's kind of consolidated to just small sections of the country.
That's
So we've
why.
had clients, we've had vendors that have actually, they will buy in stock their raw materials
mhm.
because it lets them develop predictability in their own supply chain. So instead of they're relying on their vendors to meet their kind of just-in-time manufacturing, or when are you gonna roll in with my frames? When are you gonna roll in with my drawer glides? When are you gonna roll in with my foam? They will predict, and they're taking the risk to inventory to meet that need because of how damaged their reputation was in meeting their delivery and how much it cost them to mitigate their meet their promise dates and mitigate their failures in their supply chain. So we have, like I said, we have manufacturers that warehouse it now, and then they go back and resupply. That's the way it was years ago. Hey, we keep stock, we keep product, and everybody got used to, well, I'll put it in Amazon or I'll put it in UPS and I'll get it tomorrow. That's unpredictable now and unreliable now.
So do
we
you think we're
actually
going
had
back, are we going back to warehousing then, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, warehousing of finished product, warehousing and storage of component parts to complete manufacturing. That is a must to meet those types of dates. We've actually, regarding shipping, the capacity now, if COVID didn't happen, the amount of product coming into the States, the port couldn't handle. That's how much product is being imported.
Okay, so I want to wind this back a second. You just said something super important, which is if COVID didn't happen, we would still have these issues because the port couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
And I think
the
a
volume
lot
that's
of
coming now.
Mhm.
And that's labor. That's happening because of the labor situation. I mean, you have there's no one there to unload the cargo ships. And then we don't have truckers that, to be able to drive the containers, across the country. And I have a friend who is a trucker, and I said, hey, you guys are in a really good position. He goes, we had this was up and coming before COVID. This has nothing to do with COVID because like the trades we've been singing about, we need tradespeople, and we don't have a younger generation coming in and being able to fulfill these jobs. And so the generation that said, that was finally tuned towards this, upholsterers and all these great people we rely on, they're retiring, and we're not seeing that coming back in, or not, the high schools and the career counselors aren't, sort of saying, hey, trades are a good job. It's so
Yeah, we need shop back in the high schools, don't we?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think
Okay, we
Phoebe-
have another question, and I'm so excited that our audience is bringing us lots of questions. This is such a hot topic. This question, you discussed pricing briefly. When quoting in this non-stable environment, as a vendor, how do we balance pricing higher to cover the variance so you can budget accordingly while trying not to get V'd off a project? What approach would you prefer? I know
True, if you're
everybody has
honest.
thought on this.
I can see, no, if you're honest, you get beat.
Value engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get value
Yeah,
engineered
so-
if you're honest. And we were just talking about how important honesty was. So,
Yeah.
you know, how do you handle it? It's a tough one.
So you're dealing with a different product category. So in the plumbing fixture world, for instance, the distribution of that typically goes through contractors who go through their subs, who goes through, and they're all trying to shave off a little bit of that cost. And so if you as an interior designer, you as an architect are very clear about your specification and what goes in, that makes VEing something that is a quality product, and you do the work at the beginning of this is our value, and you communicate that to the owner. And I mean, I would imagine, Jonah, if one of your interior designers comes and says to you, this product is valuable because of X, Y, and Z, these attributes, when you go to talk to your contractor, you go to talk to your purchasing agent, they're going to say these attributes are what we costed, or what was priced. And so being honest with the designer, being honest with the owner, being honest with the purchasing agent about those initial values and what makes it significant is really important. When you're talking about a commodity, so we're going to bid foam, or not foam, but just bid something that is completely reproducible, then it goes back to the interior designer and what that value of that interior design execution is, and the capacity to meet the needs of the community that it's serving.
I think you also got to do your homework ahead of time. You know, I think if you're just throwing something out or you're looking at it, I think you really got to take a look at what specifications you actually got to have and what you're going to need. And I think the more upfront and knowledgeable you are going to that, get that spec. So it goes back to pricing, right? And you're going to have to build some buffers in. But I think you're also going to have to look at the economy in general are things still continuing to flex? Are prices going to come down? Or the biggest thing I say is communication. You need to talk to the guys that you're doing all the business with. They can probably lead you down as to where things are up or where things are down or what the trends are. But that communication is huge, huge.
I think
Flexibility is so important right now, and understanding that if you want the exact specification that you've always had specified, it might cause you to wait 6 months for it. Rather, you could value engineer it, pull some of those attributes out, and get something there a lot quicker.
Yeah, Joan, I think that's a great point. I think as designers, it's important for us to really focus on being flexible and nimble right now, right? We have a tendency to become connected to our designs, right? They can become our little design babies, but you really have to look at, what's the project goals, what's the overall intent here, and really work as a collective team on just, delivering that project goal. But you've got to maintain that schedule in order to, there's multiple ways and creative sources to bring, a single division or vision or goal to life. So. Phoebe, I think you're on mute.
I like it when
I
she's-
am. Oh, thank you, Dee. Thank
There's always
you.
one. Good job, Phoebe. The rest of us are safe.
If I
Okay,
could
good.
count how many times I've said that during the pandemic, right? You're on mute.
Right, you're on mute. So Carl, what's the biggest current challenge facing delivering in the next 3 to 5 months?
3 to 5 months, we've talked on it. It's freight, product and availability, and the coming Christmas from Amazon. If you haven't started shipping product, Amazon has absorbed capacity on shipments coming overseas.
Wow.
So short term,
That's
you are, again, short term, it's these cost fluctuations, the way product is still recovering, that's the component part of manufacturing is still recovering. And so that's really, look at the freight yards, the boats in the in the harbor and just trying to be offloaded and getting it moving and planning, and then dealing with the communication of the experts. It takes longer to approve things. It takes longer to communicate back and forth what is actually drawn and approved. So planning
Why?
that within that next because everybody's still remote. Nobody's as efficient as they were. And so the communication, passing a drawing from one to another, passing a finished sample from one to another, passing a shop drawing from one person to another, and then, well, I need to run it by the owner because it's a slight change. If you're going to VE something, how in depth? I mean, to Faith's point, how in depth does the owner want to be? Do they care enough about this one thing where they want to watch it? Well, that falls on the designer, and that takes time. So short term, that managing that flow of information is really they're going to be the big challenge.
Actually, I have a question for Carl. I got to interject. I've never even thought about the competition with Amazon at the ports. That didn't even cross my mind. That just blew my mind. But you were speaking earlier about warehousing. And so if that's something that can happen, but does that always fall on the owner to have to do that and us to have to be able to proactively do it? Or are there manufacturers who are taking that on too to help us out?
Manufacturers will warehouse their own product.
Okay.
And that's good and right for them to do. But
Right.
when you're consolidating it for an installation, or you're going to take a place out of service,
Mhm.
and you're going to disrupt a community, guess what? You're going to need to have that product ready to install.
Right.
And so that's what I mean. So before you take a project, kick it off in construction. Make sure you have the product.
Right.
So that's what I mean by warehousing.
Yeah, because I think we saw warehousing come down so minimally from the recession. And I think a lot of us, you couldn't get stock. You couldn't even get stock on samples forever because no one was keeping, even, the manufacturers were not keeping stock of things. And so we were getting back to something normal, but now it's one of those things that we didn't have enough stock to draw off of. Again, it's one of those even if COVID wasn't there, we weren't necessarily in a great position for like the freeze in Texas or the Suez Canal or the labor shortages we're seeing. That we didn't have those catch those belts and suspenders there for us.
We have another question. I'm going to bring it to you all. I understand that no one has a crystal ball, that's for sure. So I'm asking for an educated guess. Being that we have a variety of experience on the panel, perhaps a common answer will evolve. When do you predict or estimate that the issues we're discussing generally will start to normalize? Will it be 6 months? Will it be longer?
Wow. I'll take a bad stab at this. Nobody wants to hear it, but I think we're still a year away. Just for what you just mentioned, Amazon's taken up whatever. So we always talk about, but you have the Christmas coming. And then right after that, there are companies that are closed for Christmas. So you got now, and you've got the Christmas shutdowns. Right after that, you got Chinese New Year. So depending on people from the Asian area, you've got all those things coming through. We've got other things I think we're going to talk about, but you've got countries out there that are shut down even today.
Yeah.
Right.
India, Vietnam, Thailand. They are, because of, I think we're going to blow one of our questions, but vaccinations that are out there.
Yeah.
You cannot, the goods and services and people in those things aren't like it is here in the US.
Mhm.
So I think we're going to really limp along until probably sometime next spring or even later.
Yeah, and
So-
it's like I was gonna say, I think Dee stole one of my talking points
I'm
because that was one of
sorry.
the things that's okay, but this is good. This is like, because I love the free flow of talking anyways. We're gonna cover a lot of stuff anyways, but no, but I think the stat I had was, Japan is only 30% vaccinated one shot, and that might be a week or two old, that information, but they're a rich country. They're connected, and the fact they don't have access to the vaccine even the way that, we take it for granted, like, oh yeah, we've got, our numbers are up and, we're kind of back to normal and not wearing masks, and they're having trouble. And, now every day there's a story of the Olympics. So I think it's really eye-opening. Like you said, that's even just like a very, first world country. When you talk about the other countries and where we have manufacturing, I'm guessing, and with the Dow tanking, yesterday, I think investors are looking at a little bit longer of a return. I'm thinking, we're at 12 months, we might be at 18. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I think it's, stepping back and looking at a global view. There's a lot, we're so connected.
But I'll give you a bright. There are those of us who are committed to inventory. There are those of us who are trying to look out with those insights and go ahead and expand what we have. So we are out there right now trying to fill up, and more than fill up, those warehouses, because we see what's coming. Now that's a crystal ball. But I'm sure it's not just me, but I know we're trying to look way ahead and look at other options that are out there, and there are some. And we're trying to go ahead and make those commitments because, again, I think foresight and planning will make us better off.
Agreed. I like that note. We're going to go with that, Dee. We have another comment. Amazon competition with warehouse workers. Amazon is overpaying employees because of the demand. So between unemployment benefits and Amazon staffing is not as simple in the US. So that's another topic we might try to approach at some point. It might get a little political, so we try to stay away from that. But it's all wrapped up in one, right?
Yeah, Phoebe, what I on something like that, really, when we were talking about where this comes out and 12 to 18 months, that's what we're seeing. And we're actually seeing that in gaming. We're seeing that in multifamily. We're seeing that in hospitality. And so it's across the kind of project work. And so that timeline makes sense, but really what's driving it is going to be cost and the availability of labor. The getting people trained to come back to work, not and paid or wage. Competing for warehouse workers at Amazon isn't the people that you're concerned that are we worried about. We need people that are able to work in factories that can tell a 5-step finish on a case piece, that know how to match finishes in both wood and metal, who can tailor seating. And those jobs, those people, they're starting to come back now because there's something valuable at working with your hands and building something. But the ramp up to training them is, just from a quality deliverable standpoint, is going to be longer.
Right.
I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was reading some stuff the other day that it wasn't just that people, you've got the Amazons paying too much, or you got people who they think maybe, we haven't quit the stimulus and all of that. But I think there's also things that they've talked about where they say 70% of the workforce is going to change jobs. And it's even some of these $50, $60, $70, $80,000 jobs out there. Could be paralegals, could be your inside technical people or whatever, that have all of a sudden have worked from home. And now they want them back in the office, and they don't want to do that. Or now they have decided that they're working from home and are able to care for their kids. And that's just a lifestyle change so much more than others. So you've got all kind of reasons that are not just the Amazon, but right now I can't find people to unload a truck. But I think there's lots of avenues out there. It's going to get real creative of who wants to work where.
Well, that leads us to my next question, which, Shannon, tell all of us, what are some of the ways you're helping to navigate the delays and still deliver for your clients? And how creative do you have to get?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back again to that communication, right? Just across the board, and then just the creative solutions. Going back again to the design intent of things, really keeping that flexibility in mind as you're looking at looking at projects across the board, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jonah, can you share some of the creative sourcing that you all have been doing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes like Shannon said, with the flexibility of whoever you're working with and what type of, they might be able to get a product that they want, that have all the specifications that they always wanted. And it might take 6 months to get that product, or they could have something within 5 days if they just change the finish, or if they just change some of the technology within that. If you look at appliances, for example, you could get, a black refrigerator maybe 3 months faster. You could get the stainless steel one, or the style of refrigerator, or any of the other appliances that go on the residential or commercial side.
Yeah,
So
where
really
you
just
use,
having that flexibility is, and that honesty and that open communication, that's really what's going to drive value in this area.
we talk about VE, right? We've all been VEing for cost forever, but now
Mhm.
we're VEing for schedule, right? So it's just it's another layer on top of how you approach a project.
It's value timing. It's BT now.
Yeah, VT, exactly. Yeah, which all turns into, more cost, right? Because time takes money. So it just layers, all of these things just layer on top of each other.
So Dee, what can people do to find product faster?
Well, I think we've all talked about it. I think right there, everyone said, what are you willing to do to change? Know your customer, know what their expectations are, know what specifications or what you have to have, and then and go from there. I think it's just, what are those reasonable expectations? I think we've just talked about it a couple of times.
Jonah and Carl, what can a supply chain leader do to help mitigate the impact of these extended lead times on people's businesses?
I think the best terminology I've heard this year is 2 simple words: plan ahead. I think more and more people are doing that, learning that you have to be as proactive as you possibly can. Being reactive, calling somebody in the morning saying I need to have something by noon, they almost laugh at you. So I think what resonates with me the most working through all this is those 2 words: plan ahead. Work with your strategic partner, leverage those partnerships that you have, use that transparency as a benefit, and keep that open line of communication and that honesty flowing, because together is how we're going to get through this all as fast as we possibly can, and make sure that we're getting products as fast as we can. So really, other than continuously monitoring the market, like we all watch the news and follow the different supply chains resources that we have for different components. But I mean, to go back to thinking it's different now. We're always focused on products before, but now with the backup into the supply chain, you're looking at how do we access these raw materials and then convert them into the products that we need to provide for our project. So I think it's a different mantra now as we're backing into the supply chain and trying to remove tiers out of the supply chain to really expedite things. That's really what I see outside of the labor shortages and components and the difficulties that we're probably going to face with that.
Mm-hmm. Carl?
I agree. I mean, plan ahead. That is of everything. If the people watching this, you can take something from this: plan ahead. Like, there should not be a furniture emergency.
Exactly.
But what fun is that, Carl?
One other thing I heard a lot of this year too is diversifying your supply chain, not just relying on one source for things. I think we've all experienced that, but from all these different issues that come up, whether it be the pandemic or the Texas freeze, or now we're rolling into hurricane season, how that's going to impact everything. But just having a diversified supply chain is really a huge asset.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we talk about diversification, we also have to think about substituting products. I think, designers probably having to do a lot of that. I hear from all of our ALCers, we had to spec this 3 times, 4 times. This is my 5th go round on a project. So Dee, what information do folks need to share with you to get something done faster, easier?
Well, again, we're going to talk, what do you got to have? What do you have specifications on? But probably the biggest thing that there's a change, I think, that's got to happen. And, right now, most people think this is the fastest way. Let's see if I can get it in there. This is the fastest way that you can go get a product, right? I'm going to get on the computer and I'm going to send an email.
Mm-hmm.
But the strongest weapon you have out there right now is this. Anybody know what this is? It's called telephone. Pick it up, call somebody, Get them on the phone. You know, they can't get around you if you're on the internet. They can't delay it. They got to pick up and they got to answer your question and be honest. So if you want something, old school it. Pick
I
up the
can't
phone
agree. I can't agree more because I mean, even when I've seen, I had a millennial, I said, just pick up the phone. Like I saw 20 emails go back and forth and I knew they were just missing each other. And we're in such a complicated process that picking up, you're right, picking up the phone. I know it sounds, maybe some of it, it's mind blowing and some of it is just like, duh, you know, of course you do that because you can have those intricate conversations about getting down, like Shannon and I can say, this is the intent, this is what we need to deliver. But if you give me 10 different options and 5 of those are good, and then 3 of those are available, and 2 of those I can get even faster, or I've already shipped or in warehouse, then that really helps in that conversation as we were able to whittle it down because it's, yeah, you can make a lot of, it's, you know, a paper trail through email that just doesn't get you anywhere. So I like that you brought up the phone. I think that's a technology that we have sort of outcast, and it's incredibly helpful. Again, I find it, you know, it's a good one.
And they make them so convenient now. They even fit in your pocket. Let's change topics only marginally. Shannon, are you approaching renovation and new construction projects differently given all of this?
Yeah, so I think so much of what we've talked about, right, is across the board, the communication, leveraging relationships. I think the biggest difference we're seeing with the renovations versus the new construction projects is you just lose that luxury of those long project durations or schedules, right? So we talk about plan ahead, which is great. We're still going to plan ahead as much as we can, but you lose that luxury a little bit. We're really seeing the renovations pick up with our clients. You know, investments are more ready available for renovations or acquisitions we're seeing with our clients. So we're seeing that pick up, but it's an immediate and quick need, right? That's what we're seeing a lot of right now. So while we try to plan ahead, you lose that luxury a little bit. So we go back to options, right? So that's what we're really working with our clients to understand. We've talked a little bit about this, but their threshold for adjustments, right? So we can talk about the designer's threshold, but then also what's our client's threshold for adjustments and kind of where do their priorities fall. So I think that's one of the main differences.
I'm actually really glad. I'm really glad you brought up, you know, renovations and acquisitions. You know, we're talking about, you know, we've been focused on senior living, you know, with Ageless Living Collaborative, but you know, a lot of it is like we got to build because the baby boomers are coming. The best locations are already taken. Acquisitions in the last year and a half, 2 years have just been vast, and so we are doing a lot of renovations. And we have lost those lead times that we were able to have with the new construction. But I will say this, I think one of the things that I'm seeing starting to bog down a little bit, and that's why renovations are good, because it's a smaller pool of money you have to find. And I'm finding the financial, we have a real conservative financing situation right now. All, you know, the REITs and those, you know, they are being much more cognizant. Actually, they're much more involved in the design process. I mean, I have some major REITs that they're looking at it and invest, which is great, because I think they're part of the conversation, and we can start to really make the changes that we've been talking about in senior living from the top down. But it's also that sometimes that process takes longer and it's more complicated, and we have less time to do it. So that's a longer process too that I see slowing down, and so that's slowing the projects down in general. Everybody has a certain bandwidth in which that they can handle, you know. That was the other thing I was glad I was able to slip in, that I'm seeing that the conservative financing is another thing that we're going to see some pushback on, along with, you know, with all our other pile of great challenges that we've been talking about, you know. So.
Well, you know, you bring up senior living and renovations, and I've got to ask Jonah about, you know, the recent appliance shortages and how that's impacted the commercial market for sure, as well as the residential.
Yeah, so if you look at the multifamily segment or senior living segment, you probably can't walk into an office and not have a conversation around appliances and what the shortages and how it's impacting them being able to turn units or to sell units or to sell apartments. Having those appliances are what we consider a very critical item in people's living. So you want to make sure they have not only the appliances that they need, but the appliances that they want. And like we talked about and discussed earlier too, about having that flexibility as far as the options and creating a minimum specification to meet your customers' needs, to be able to understand the voice of customer, make sure that you're giving them what they want or selling them what they want when they move into these units or when they move into apartment. But maybe understanding that we can't get you all the options or we can't get you the finish, but we can get you something that's close, and really working hard to have some really good substitutions and some options available to them.
I think the residential market's really interesting too, because we were all stuck at home for a year and home became that much more precious. So when you're saying, would you rather wait 3 more months for this fridge that you want? And you go, yeah, because I'm going to have to stare at it, you know, for however, and when am I going to replace it again? So it's again, that's what you were saying about, you know, what is the client's tolerance? It's, or what if, you know, my mother's redoing her place and it's like, oh no, I'll wait, or this other thing I'll go and get. But it's that the preciousness of home has definitely been reevaluated this last year.
And certainly home versus commercial. Commercial, you need it now. Home, you might be able to wait just a little bit. We have another question. Renovation, repurpose, and acquisitions are the leading business opportunities. Because of COVID, new construction is on the out, correct?
Yep.
Out of the 3, do you all feel that the acquisition piece will be the largest opportunity in all levels of care in senior living? Great question. Thank you for that question, James.
Yeah. I'll jump in here. I think that I wouldn't say new development is out. I would say it's on the slower path, right? So I'd say that the acquisitions, renovations right now, again, going back to the money, right? Because that's really where all these projects start. You know, we're seeing, you know, a quicker, you know, more willingness to invest in the renovations and the acquisitions. And so we're kind of looking at almost like a 2 to 3 year. We think in the next 2 to 3 years, the renovations, the acquisitions, the adaptive reuses, right? We're also seeing some momentum there as COVID has forced things that were to be emptied and what can we repurpose them to be. So I wouldn't say, you know, new development is out. It's just a little it's in the slow lane right now, but I do think that it's very much coming back. It's not going away.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in? Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, you see how the financiers and the webinars I sit in, you see that it's acquisitions because they really are saying the best locations have been taken. And it's location is what they want. So that's where it's either that or they have to create where you're seeing the newer senior, it's almost like they're creating the whole city around it. It's one of these where you've got all that multi-purpose campuses that they're doing, where you've got
master plan community.
The master plan community. So that's where the new construction is, that senior living, you know, what we're seeing a lot of. So
and that's really old school, because if you think back to the days of Del Webb, that's what they started with, right? So everything old is new again. Faith, you are big on these labor issues and how they're affecting all the segments. Where are you seeing the most labor issues in the design segment?
Oh my gosh. Well, design, I mean, I think of construction and design are the trades. And I think that's huge. Obviously, we've been talking about supply chain, and I think we've covered quite a bit of how we feel about the labor there.
Right.
But I'm just so worried because we talk about acquisitions and renovations that the real upholsterers and our furniture medics and people who are those hands-on that can be nimble and mobile and make things happen. We're seeing that that's a labor that we're really lacking in, and whether people don't even know that's something that they can do or that there's a market for it, because a lot of it is small one man shops, two you know, one lady shop, window treatments, you know, those sort of places, which they're so great. They do fabulous work. Yeah. So
bread and butter. Yeah.
Yep.
Where are people who know how to sew?
Yeah.
So what's
I love my seamstress.
What's the solution? Are we now going to have to go and plead our case to the high school counselors?
Yeah.
What's the solution? Because we've got
Yeah.
to get the work done. We've got to get installations done. We have to have
got-
people sewing. We have to, all these jobs need to be done.
Yeah. I think it's getting the word out. I think, maybe there's even more, we have these shows about different careers, the deadliest catch and the dirtiest jobs and all of these things. And I think we need to let people know that there are these other things, and they're pretty interesting. I mean, these are not boring things that, so there almost needs we need sort of
Our own reality
Discovery
show.
Channel. Yeah, we need our channel to be like, hey, there's this other world out there, and then get the high school counselors to jump on board. And I think Dee has said, yeah, we need SHOP again. We need home ec again. We need some of these other things where you try your hand at it, you get one taste of it, and you go, wow, this is really cool. I think I want to do this, So I think
You can build a career with it.
you can build a career with it. You can build a very good career. I mean,
Mhm.
tradesmen, they can do some really good work and make a fine living. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to bring up a supply chain issue about global vaccination at this point, but I think we kind of covered that.
Yeah.
Anything else anybody wants to bring to the table before we close out for today? I'm really thrilled that our audience has brought us so many good questions. Thank you very much, each and every one of you. And I'd like to thank the panel, all of our experts today, Carl Long from PMI, Dee Duncan, KB Contract, Faith Marabella, WDC. Shannon, you're new to our panel. Thank you for joining us today from Meyer Design. And
Thank you.
Jonah, we have previously had our ALCer, Laura Busalacci, with us from Brookdale, but today she gave us Jonah, and we are delighted that he could join us and bring his expertise to the table. I think that we were able to answer everybody's questions, and I just wanted to do a few housekeeping notes. We are going to take August off at the ALC. We know that it's a really busy month, a lot of trade shows, a lot of activity. So we'll be back with some exciting new content in September, and we're looking forward to seeing you all then. In the meantime, if you want to check out any of our previous webinars, they are available to you 24/7 at agelesslivingcollaborative.org. And if you would like to ask about a topic that you think would be interesting to all, please do drop us a line. Let us know the topic that you'd like us to assemble a group of experts on, and we'll be happy to consider that. And it might be something that you see in the next few months. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope you guys have a great summer, and we'll see you in September. Bye now.